Guys and gals, just a quick reminder before you watch this video, do not forget to subscribe for more content such as this, and if you do so, please click the little bell symbol right next to the subscribe button. You'll get notifications on your phone, on your tablet, and on your laptop for when you can get more content from this beautiful face once more. Hey everyone, Davey here with a new Transformers figure review. Getting back into these, and it's been feeling rather nice, so now it's time for a figure that I've actually been kind of excited for the longest. So after the announcement of the Studio Series, I thought, okay, it's cool. They're revisiting some figures, kind of polishing up on some things that could be fixed. And one of the things I always got kind of bothered by was that Blackout from the original 2007 movie was given a Voyager class figure. And after watching the movie, I think we can all safely assume he does not belong in the Voyager class. He looks like he is a rather decent leader-looking dude, at least in terms of size. We understand that Megatron is the main leader of the Decepticons, but size-wise, he can really go toe-to-toe with Optimus Prime. Him, along with Bone Crusher, were the ones that, the two biggest ones to me, were put in the wrong class, figure-wise. So it looks like they're wronging one of those mistakes by introducing us to Transformers Studio Series Leader Class Blackout. Here he is, inside of his packaging. Rather cool that they're just going with traditional box style packaging, and it looks very reminiscent of some of the ones that I've been doing recently, like last night Megatron, and then Jazz right before this guy. And you got Transformers there in red on the sides, like almost all of the packaging has been for the past couple of lines, like Power of the Primes has been doing recently, etc., etc. We got an image of the character there, part of the Studio Series line. Transformers from the first movie, the figure there in his robot mode. And then at the top, it just says Transformers, only with the classic 2007 font. On the sides, we got an image here of Blackout. Also, this is kind of weird, but he is a Decepticon, and yet he's got the Autobot symbol right there. I think they could have changed that up a little bit to kind of go along with the theme, but I digress. Then over here, nice little close-up of Blackout with Studio Series. He's number 8 in the line. At least I'm assuming he's number 8 total, or maybe the leaders, I don't know. But we flip to the back, and then we got the traditional imagery of Transformers packaging. Besides that really about does it for the packaging. Again, nothing on the bottom except a UPC. So without further ado, let's crack this bad boy open and check out exactly if they were able to rectify the scaling issue with Decepticon Blackout. Hey guys, I have returned to cover Leader Class Blackout from the Transformers Studio Series. If you aren't able to tell and look closely, you'll notice that I'm using a brand new microphone different from the footage you just saw of me showing off the figure inside of the box, as well as a completely different shirt. That's because we are now officially a week, close to 2 here, after I shot that video of me showing Blackout inside of the box. Why did so much time pass between then and now? Now being ready, formally being ready, to do a review on Leader Blackout after messing with him for about a week, almost 2. That's because I have some things to say about this figure, and you'll eventually figure out why. But here's Leader Class Blackout from the Studio Series in his helicopter mode. And he's actually rather overwhelming in terms of size proportion. And I gotta be honest, I'm not saying that in a bad thing, at least in this particular case, because he is supposed to be not only a military-sized helicopter, like a bombarding type of helicopter that's supposed to carry heavy weaponry, but also he is supposed to be a little bit to scale with the other Transformers in the series. If you go back, well, in the movie series specifically, if you go back and watch the original 2007 movie, you'll notice that Blackout was supposed to be a big guy. He's not supposed to be small like a Voyager, like he was originally released in that movie line back in 2007. So here they went back to the drawing board and said, okay, I think it's about time that Blackout got his leader class version down, and transforming him into the helicopter mode here to show him off on camera, he is rather sizable. We are talking about a foot from the tip of this little gas fueling rod, whatever the hell it's called, the tip of that to at least the tip of this little wingtip here. Not necessarily the propellers, but at least, because the propellers are technically changing size because you're rotating them, but at least this little wingtip here. We're talking about a foot, maybe a little longer than a foot, about maybe 14 inches, 13, 14 inches. So he's a very large guy in terms of length and width. And when I say width, I don't necessarily mean the copter itself, but the overall circumference that these propellers kind of take up. Now, in terms of height, of course, he's not going to be picking up from the ground, but at least proportion-wise, he's rather sizable. He's sizable and also to scale, because it doesn't feel like the front is bigger than the back in a very unnatural sort of way. He actually looks legit. I'm just going to move him a little bit to the side and bring out the classic Voyager class Blackout from the first movie's toy line. Now, obviously you can see the scale is massively different, where you can clearly tell this is a leader and this is a Voyager. In fact, back in 2007, Voyager Blackout was actually pretty small for a Voyager to begin with. Many of us thought that it was actually a little bit on the smaller side when it came to that Voyager line. And it would happen sparingly. It wasn't like today where almost every Voyager is this size. Because back then we would get one ever so often, and then we were back to the Voyagers like Ratchet that were rather hefty and massive for a Voyager, especially in robot mode. Here, it's almost like the reverse, where this is the leader class. This is part of the new line where some of those scales have been kind of tampered with, but I can honestly say that the scaling they got for this guy in his vehicle mode here, or his helicopter mode rather, is actually true to scale and feels like a leader. Color schemes are a little bit different. I think they're actually a little bit better on this one over here, so there were some significant improvements that they were able to go back and kind of retrofit to be a little bit better, especially that cockpit that I really, really enjoy on this one here, as opposed to just the blackened out one over here. And I actually have to commend them for going a little above and beyond with the detail in terms of the little rivets on the panels and the sides of the body here that are supposed to be accurate to the design of the type of copter he is. I don't know the specific name, but I do know that this looks pretty much what we got on screen in that opening scene in the original 2007 movie. And to me personally, my favorite parts of the detail in this mode has to be the cockpit. I love the little glass windows here, and just the overall way that this is all sculpted, from the little ball here. I don't know exactly what that does. I'm imagining it's like a form of satellite, at least some kind of super satellite that's supposed to send out massive signals to be able to pick up the smallest little blips for, again, military use, as well as, like I said, the refueling rod here, and then the little missile portions here on the side. Those are my favorite parts. Oh, and the little turbines here at the very top that, again, are very movie accurate and rather well detailed. In terms of paint, they didn't really have to do anything really extraordinary with the paint, except for some minor decals that you'll notice on the side of the copter, with the little star here on the back, little indentations, little serial numbers and acronyms and stuff like here over here in the back, as well as his little egotistical personality kind of coming out here at the very end, where it says Blackout in a little white pinstripe here towards the very end. But besides that, there's not really a whole lot when it comes to paint job or decals, because the majority of the plastic is already colored that way, so they didn't have to do anything with the paint. But at least it's very accurate in terms of color scheme and scale, and it's actually a rather good looking copter. The only thing though is that he really doesn't do much in this mode except just sit there. He does have landing gear here at the bottom, but none of the wheels rotate. They're all just standalone solid pieces, so they're just primarily there for show and to make sure that he's elevated off the ground in a way that doesn't seem like it's off balance and he's like bouncing back and forth like this. So it's all level-headed, and at least that's kind of nice. And of course the propellers do spin around. The back propeller here is more loose or looser. I don't know how to properly say it, I'm sorry. But this propeller swings around and rotates rather freely. The top one, unfortunately, does not. If I rotate it kind of goes a little bit like that, but eventually stops because this is actually rather tight. It's not tight to where you have to force it, but tight enough to where it's like, okay, this is not going to rotate like your ordinary copter. And on the one hand, that's a bummer, and on the other, I'm like, well, I've seen plenty of toy, transformer or not, that comes in the form of a helicopter, and then rotating this thing around is actually rather annoying. Or when you're trying to handle the copter, but then this thing keeps on rotating because of how loose it is, that can kind of be understandable to a degree. The only other little feature to kind of talk about with Blackout here in this mode is that he has a little hidden companion. If you remember from the movie, he is the sole, I guess you could say, caretaker of, and let me reach in here and pop him out without breaking anything off. From underneath his little cargo section comes out a little mini Scorponok. If you remember, he's the one that deploys Scorponok to go on a recon mission and take out those guys in the desert. Scorponok comes with the figure, and he gets housed in here. Before I cover Scorponok, the little mini Scorponok figure, the only other little big issue, and I know that's an oxymoron, but you'll get what I mean, of Blackout in this mode is that once you do remove Scorponok, if you want to play around with him or display him or do anything like that, is that if you go under here, they did a good job of getting rid of some of the kibble or some of the things that show off a little bit of the robot mode. So he's actually rather well hidden, except for this giant ass gap right there. And I'm trying to show it off as best as I can without risk breaking the propellers, because one of the propellers actually already has, actually this one right here, at towards the very end here where it's connected to the main circular portion, it's actually already warped enough that if I bend that anymore, it is going to break off. This propeller will break off, so I have to be ultimately careful. But down here at the bottom where Scorponok came out of is a whole section that's just completely empty. And I'm sorry, but that really bugs me right there. There's nothing in there. So if you're displaying Scorponok next to him, you better have Blackout and robot mode to get rid of that. Otherwise, if you have him in a helicopter mode, and I know that many of you might not be caring about this so much as I am, but there's a giant gap right there where they could have at least added like a panel, like two panels that come off of this piece right here, fold in and close up this entire section. I've seen them be clever with something like that before. It's a shame that they didn't exactly put that here. So once you remove Scorponok, you have this giant anus here in the back of the helicopter portion of Blackout, and that's a shame. So the little mini Scorponok is just an added little bonus. He's no more than a little accessory that they decided to throw in. He does have a little bit of articulation in the front claws, and then most especially the tail. It would be a travesty to not have an articulated tail right there. But on top of that, you also got little paint decals to kind of flesh him out a little bit. Some gold-plated and platinum-plated stuff going on the top, but not so much going on in the back. And to be quite honest, this little Scorponok that was thrown in, he's nifty, he's cute, but he's nothing short of a McDonald's toy, a glorified McDonald's toy. You're mainly here to check out Leader Blackout, which we're going to go ahead and do now by diving into the transformation of Leader Blackout here. And this is where the nightmare begins. Let's get started. First, you actually have to do a couple things. One, we go in the back here, and this piece right here actually detaches. So we're going to detach this whole back piece here that has the back propeller. That gets removed and put to the side. Does not belong anywhere else in the transformation. Next is a move that's actually very reminiscent of the actual movie. It's the very first thing you see Blackout do when he's about to transform into his robot mode in that opening scene. And that is going up to this top propeller, couldn't speak there for a second, and reaching a certain section where you split up the blades and push them all to the back like so. Alright, so now there's nothing here in the front, and they're all backed up over here like that, just like it was in the movie. So it's kind of neat that they added that in there, because it is technically movie accurate. Again, just handle the actual blades with care, because one of them, like you can see here, it's kind of drooping a little bit, And that's because there's a little warp or crease right here in the plastic. And I'm just scared that if I press it any further, it's going to pop off and just rip. And there goes one of the blades. But what can I say? Led Zeppelin song. All right. So now let's get the fun started here. So the first thing I like to do in this mode is go to the back here and take these panels right here. And I kind of want to get a little closer right there. So let's see if we're a little accurate. So we're going to take these panels right here and just kind of pop them off from the main body. Like so. You can kind of see this whole thing kind of separate. Do the same thing to the other side. And then as we tug on them, you'll notice that everything just kind of starts falling down here. There we go. And there are what are going to be the legs. Now, as I did that, I don't know if it's hard to tell or easy to tell rather, but on the inside here, we're going to take the pieces that made up this little missile section here on the sides, on both sides, and just grab them, detach them from the center piece of the body, and just kind of move them to the side. Same thing over here. So now you got this travesty of a fucking figure. You see this right here? It actually looks like a legitimate mechanical death trap. All right, and that's rather scary. Let's go to the top. And these two panels right here, very reminiscent of the original Voyager figure, are going to separate, if I can. And pardon me if I just butcher some steps, because I know that it's not going to be the simplest thing. Oh, here we go. So you nudge them in there, and you notice that these pieces right here split up. The funny thing is, though, is that they're on a hinge that's in the same place. It's not a double hinge. It's just one hinge. So you kind of have to grab them from the side, take them, and pull them to the side. Like that. And actually, before you do that, these engine pieces right here, you're going to pop them off from the main body. You actually pop them off twice. They're on a double hinge, unlike these pieces. They're actually on a double hinge. So you take the engine piece, flip it forward, pop it into place. It's only going to pop once. When you go back to it, it pops twice. But when you go forward, it just pops once. Now we can take those two pieces that we separated, flip them up, and have them rest on that engine piece that we now moved just a little further forward. So take this, flip it up, have it rest right there. All right. Now that we got that out of the way, we can kind of proceed forward with what I wanted to show in the cockpit here, which is actually kind of cool and reminiscent of the 2007 movie line where they had that automatic feature, or I can't remember what it was called, auto transform or whatever, where you moved one piece and that would move like one or two other pieces to kind of skip a step, but at the same time there was like a little automatic transformation type gimmick. It was a gimmick, but in certain figures, not all of them, but in certain ones, it was actually kind of cool. Very reminiscent of that. We go underneath here, and the landing gear that he has here at the very, very front, we're going to press it in, and that's going to press this entire thing. And when I do that, you'll notice that this piece is starting to break off, and this top panel, which is very, very loose, in fact, we can go ahead and just flip it up like this, kind of causes a little opening here, and as I press inside, right there, and push the piece all the way in, his head pops out right there. That's actually kind of cool. And as you notice, the little gas refueling rod, you can fold it down, like right about there. That's where it's actually going to be. And then we take this panel, flip it up, flush it with the body. Everything is now in place in the torso area. So you can see right there. And there's his head. Make sure it's all the way out and situated. Now, we can take the legs as well as the waist. Let me see if I can show this off accurately. Don't think I will be able to, but I knew that going into this review that I was going to butcher the camera angles and everything. In fact, speaking of camera angles, let's move the camera up a little bit. Okay. So, now I can go up here, kind of show off what I was trying to talk about. First of all, you also got to finish flushing this piece with the little satellite ball thing all the way inside and make sure it's completely flushed. And now, we can take the waist. Waist has a peg right there, a little rectangular peg, and it fits into a rather obscure hole that's right where my finger is, right there. So we just take it all, flip it forwards, and as we do that, We take the legs, kind of rotate them downwards, and yes, you hear right to the joints. We'll cover those later. But we move these out of the way. We take the crotch piece, or crotch guard, if you want to call it that, flip it down to kind of move it out of the way, and now we can take the entire waist and clip it into place. And that secures that entire section right there. So now we got the crotch piece facing down. We got the legs in their proper place, more or less at least. Right about there. All right. So now we're going to form the feet. Now, one step to do that is to take the leg and rotate it 90 degrees outwards. So now we have the knee facing forward. These panels are now in the back, but that's actually the right orientation of the leg. So we do that right there. Next comes forming the feet, which in my opinion, or formally forming the feet, which in my opinion is actually my favorite part of the whole transformation. We take the landing gear and we flush it in, like so. Be careful with the landing gear because it is a little fidgety, at least it is for me, and pops off rather easily and annoyingly. Now, the most fun part of the transformation, these panels right here, you have to take them, pull them out, rotate them all the way around, and push them back in, like that. And then to kind of complete the entire step, there's a little triangular piece here at the very, very tippy top. It kind of doesn't break off, but you have to disconnect it a little bit and rotate it around. So right there, this piece right here, rotate it, press it in. It's not going to pop anywhere, but it's just going to flush with the rest of this giant panel. And then before moving on to the next leg, I guess we'll just show off the feet here. You just take all of this, pivot it downwards like that. And as you do that, again, possibly paying homage to that automatic feature from before, from 2007, this piece right here is going to elevate. So you do this, boom. You saw that kind of move up. That causes there to be some kind of knee guard, if you want to call it that. But that pretty much forms that entire foot. Now, before I move forward with the other leg and just kind of redo the whole thing, there's actually, and I'm kind of spoiling the articulation here, but there's actually two joints in the knee. You can either leave the leg as it is, or you can do what some other folks have been saying on YouTube and communities elsewhere, is that one of the joints can actually bend backwards, so you can kind of give Blackout a little chicken leg type thing. Like that. So he'll have a little bit better support, so to speak. I gotta be honest, I feel like I need to rewatch the movie because I do not remember him having the chicken legs, but I digress. And as you can see, the majority of him is actually already coming together. And since he's actually taller than I was anticipating the frame to really grab here, I think I'm gonna have to elevate the camera once more. Now let's form those arms. All right. This is where things get just a little more complicated, but I guess not really. So we go down here, or back here rather. This whole missile piece breaks in half, like so. And we rotate this down, and that kind of forms the arm. And then back here, let me rotate the arm around. Okay. So here we have this panel with another panel right here. We take it, fold it all the way down. There's a tab right there that goes into a slot there, but I noticed that most of the time it doesn't clip. It doesn't hold. I just leave it alone, even though it is kind of a nuisance that it just kind of hangs out like this, but whatever. Then let me rotate the arm around so I can show. And here is the hand. Flip it out like that. And then we take this piece with that wobbly panel, move it all the way around like this, and then we take the little remaining missile piece, let me see if I can move it. There we go. We unpeg it, move it all the way around, and now we're going to fill up this hollow spot by taking a tab, where is it? Right here. It's going to fit into this slot right there. So, doing so, well, did I do it? Did I do it without looking? Am I that good? Okay, there we go. There we go. All right. There we go. Presses together, and now that fills up the entire giant-ass gap that the arm had. Now, to make sure that the arm is accurate, the little part with the star has to be facing forward. Now, that's not all. We got to form the shoulder. Although forming the shoulder is pretty fun. We take this, kind of move it out of the way, and that's going to show off this panel. This panel has 2 slots right there, 2 tabs right there. You do the math. We take it, fold it forwards, pops into place, and that forms the shoulder. And now we just got to make sure that everything is in its proper place here in the arm. There you go. That is it for that arm. Same thing over here. Rinse and repeat. Take this panel here, form it down. I think this one clips a little better into its tab, but that's not saying a whole lot. Fold it forwards, clip it into place. And that clip, that tab, that little pop, it's just so satisfying. It's one of the more satisfying parts, one of the few satisfying parts about transforming this fucker into a robot, or at least transforming him in general, really. He's pretty much done with the exception of all of this. Take the entire thing. This top part is actually is on 2 hinges or 2 joints. We move it up so that now this little turbine piece is sitting right on top right there, again to demonstrate how movie accurate it really is. So we take it, fold it up to make sure that this is sitting right on top. And then we go back here, and you'll notice this is kind of dangling off and it's falling down to the bottom. We take the back portion where that propeller piece was attached to. We break it off, well, not off, but break it down, fold it in, sits right in there, like that. And then, this is where it gets just a little complicated. I guess I'm going to have to move the propellers to demonstrate. So this piece, it's on 2 hinges. What I like to do is go in here, the inwards piece, put my thumbs in there. You heard 2 pops. That breaks it off, and there's a 3rd pop actually. And now you got this hinge, like that. I don't know if you can see it, like that. So it's a hinge. Double jointed hinge. Looks like that. And now there's a groove right there. That's where this, where does it go? Okay. This little nub is going to go into. And it fits rather snugly. Doesn't pop in, but it fits in there. Now we literally take everything, flush it down, make sure that that engine is facing forwards. So now we can press that in, have it rest right there, and now he looks like a fucking peacock with all this just kind of dangling around him. Now we take the propellers. They were originally facing down, so we got to put them back down and have them rest where they're supposed to, right about there. All right. And the last finishing touches, these panels right here that broke off from the top, you separate them if they aren't already separated, but most of the time they are going to be. And we just take them, flush them down, and they just kind of rest there, right here, to kind of give it that form of symmetry here at the very, very top. Okay, so with that transformation to the side, which is, again, not too bad. You saw that the steps aren't super terribly complicated because it's mostly just unfolding and kind of getting him out of that really compressed position that he was in helicopter mode, and just making sure that certain pieces are rested where they're supposed to be. And as soon as you do that, you kind of see the magic kind of come together and display what I believe to be one of the more accurate versions of not just Blackout in terms of the character and in terms of what they did here with that movie character, but just one of the more accurate looking figures to simply be in retail. And by that I mean, like, you go to Target, you go to Walmart, whatever, and this figure is there sitting on the shelf for $50, and yet it's got really neat detail on the actual figure in robot mode. Especially this top portion of the figure is my favorite part to look at in robot mode because of just how movie accurate that entire section of the body really looks, from the chest being the cockpit, his top piece here with the little engine part here at the very top, that's very movie accurate. And even though these panels here are just kind of sitting on top of the body here without ever clipping into anywhere, it just adds to that level of detail that I actually really like. And I thought, that was a little a little, I don't want to say much, but a little more than enough for Hasbro to do, at least in recent memory, because recently it feels like Takar is the one that really does really cool detailings like that, not necessarily Hasbro. So Hasbro going out of the way to do that, it's like, okay, that's actually rather nifty. And the detail starts to become a little bit more minimal as you go down the figure, but still, it looks rather cool when you got the arms here, the hands, and then of course, like I said, the movie detailing and the movie accuracy to the way that the figure is sculpted, from the propellers hanging off here at the very, very top, to the legs that you have that chicken style going on. But like I said, I can't remember for certain, but I think he had that chicken leg thing going on in the actual movie. On top of that, you see some detail going on around the legs where he's got like gears moving around, and then you got these pieces kind of fleshing out the lower leg as well as the very stompy feet, and transforming the feet. Again, like I said, it's my favorite part of transforming the figure from helicopter to robot mode. And as it stands, like I said, this is a very beautiful figure, and my favorite part is mainly this top portion here, from the top section here of the engine, but most notably, before I completely forget about it, the head sculpt. The head sculpt is immaculate. I can't believe that Hasbro was able to put in this type of head sculpt in a figure like this. Of course, not without its downside when it comes to detail, and that has to be the scale. Even though this is a little bit bigger than your average Voyager, it's still technically not a leader. The leaders from past movie lines have been a little bit bigger. So again, this leader version of Blackout, in Robo mode at least, he is more or less a little bit bigger than an average Voyager, but still a little smaller than your average leader. For size comparison, with the magic of editing, of course, let's take a look at Voyager Blackout from the original movie line, only this time in Robot mode. Again, ignoring the colorings and the details that are obviously going to be a little bit different, especially in the amount of scaling, or not so much scaling, but proportions of the legs versus the arms versus the shoulders versus the head. Yes, they did a number on Leader Blackout where he looks spectacular with the detailing, the way his body looks, how movie accurate it is. But scaling, you see that he's not necessarily that much bigger from the Voyager. I mean, he's definitely bigger, but I just don't see him kind of towering. And usually when we see, but again, playing devil's advocate, this was never the biggest Voyager to begin with from that original movie line. But there you can see the significant improvements that they were able to make on the robot mode for Leader Blackout here. That, again, it's the reason for why the Studio Series exists in the first place, is to kind of go back and fix some of those figures that I think everybody universally had an issue with. It's definitely got its charm over the years, but yeah, there's a reason for why this exists. So moving him to the side here, let's get back into Leader Blackout here, where, again, this is definitely a figure that I loved looking at him inside of the box, and I love even more looking at him here outside of the box with the detailing, and especially when you get down to some of the posing that he has, which of course leads into my section talking about the articulation, which unfortunately is a little hindered from here and there because of how movie accurate Hasbro was trying to be with this figure, which in Robo mode they really nailed. It's just that it came at a cost of limiting a little bit of his articulation. So starting off with the head, can definitely pivot up and down and rotate slightly to the left and slightly to the right, but it can definitely not do 360 due to the pieces right around his neckline, so it's obviously not going to happen. Shoulders. So the shoulders are a little weird, so there's a little bit of pivoting there, which is funny because that's definitely part of the transformation, but at the same time, some Hot Toys figures, they have that, so might as well count that, right? So you got some shoulder movement there, but with those joints, but more importantly, you got top joint there that can move it up and down, like that, and then left and right slightly before it has to stop because of this piece. You do have a bicep swivel, like many other figures, right about there. And then, of course, you have an elbow joint. So, pretty basic. Bends at about right there. It's just one elbow joint, so doesn't exactly allow the biggest of movements. You can't do a full, bicep crunch, but I'll take what I can get. And then lastly, something a little bit surprising is some hand articulation. So the hand can kind of pivot, at least in this mode, slightly up and down like so. It's obviously going to be able to move because of the transformation, but at least in this mode, once everything's kind of in its place, it can still move a little bit up and down. And then if you reach inside, I'll demonstrate a little bit better with this hand, you can actually open his hand, which, don't get me wrong, it's a very creature-esque looking hand that only has 3 fingers. So you can actually take his thumb, I guess you could say that's what it is, and open the 2 pieces of the hand up. So it's kind of cool that they threw that in there. Of course, because of the way it was transformed and how you saw it be transformed, no waist articulation whatsoever, so forget about that. Leg articulation, that's where we get a little complicated, but in a good way. So we definitely have ratcheted joints, as you were able to tell from the transformation. At the very top, moving up and down, you do have those ratcheted, really hard ratcheted joints. They're really difficult to move, but at least that means that your figure's not going to be that loose. Of course, moving them forward is stopped by the crotch piece, but at least moving them back is actually rather mobile. And of course, moving them up and down, they are still ratcheted. Moving them side to side like this, but lesser so. It's almost like he managed to get some WD-40 up in the side to side rather than the up and down. You do have a thigh swivel, as demonstrated from the transformation, so it's there. And then, as I mentioned in the transformation, he's got 2 joints in the knee, one that bends fully up and down, and you kind of have to mess around with it and kind of get the propeller blades out of the way, because I guess you could say that in this mode he is a little kibbly, so you gotta be careful, especially with those blades, because again, I have one that's at risk of being broken. But right there, you got 2 joints, one that bends all the way back, and then the other one that bends back, but also bends a little forward. And again, that can kind of cause for that chicken look that he originally had. And lastly are going to be the feet, which I gotta be honest, just like transforming them is my favorite part of the articulation, because you got full pivots up and down, which of course every time you do that, this knee guard is going to be moving up and down with it, as demonstrated in the transformation. You just got to make sure that it doesn't hinder anything or runs into any of these top pieces right here, otherwise you'll risk breaking it. But more importantly, you do have pivoting side to side. And considering how massive these feet are, posing, stances, making sure that he's really well balanced and firm and not top heavy, definitely not a problem that I've had with the figure so far. What I have had a problem with this darling figure is 2 things to kind of close out the review to a degree. So one is more so than the other. The one that's a lesser of an issue that I gotta be honest, I wasn't really thinking about at all until somebody pointed it out online, is that he is a little barren in accessories. So we already covered Scorponok, right? We'll just put him right there. Right there. Okay? We already covered Scorponok, right? Okay. Well, remember that propeller piece we had to remove for the transformation to start off? So this right here has a little wing, and you actually take the wing, fold it down, and that wing, if you notice, had a little peg. That peg fits into one of the holes that's on that panel that's really loose. Right here, there's a hole in there. You can actually put that in there, and that creates like a little propeller blade type weapon. Okay. Sure. I mean, I guess technically he did have that in the movie at one point. In fact, I'll go as far as to say that he probably had it in Revenge of the Fallen, where he was kind of sort of resurrected, because at one point Michael Bay started to use the same Transformers that had originally died, but they just showed up. An added gun or an added something would have been a little nice, but that's not my main issue. My main fucking issue is that, quite frankly, this thing is a motherfucking nightmare to make sure I'm posing him right for the rest of the review as I go into this rage-filled rant. But quite honestly, guys, this guy is a disastrous motherfucking nightmare to transform from robot mode, which he came packaged in, so I had no choice, to vehicle mode. From robot mode to helicopter mode, it's a nightmare. Because basically, you take all those steps that I just did in the transformation about unfolding him, springing him out, making sure everything's situated, just reverse all that. But here's where the catch comes in. In helicopter mode, he is so panely that for some reason I just feel like Hasbro did not think it through when it came to designing the transformation, that they were so busy making sure that he was movie accurate in helicopter mode and he was very accurate in robot mode, as you see before you, that they didn't fully realize the transformation. And because of that, when it came to me transforming him from vehicle mode to robot mode, I swear to God, I almost broke this thing. Not out of trying to force a piece, not out of not knowing what I was doing, but out of rage. Out of flat out rage, because I have OCD. Well, self-diagnosed OCD. I am meticulous, I am detail-oriented, and I want my shit, and I'm kind of a perfectionist. I want my shit to be perfect. So when I'm trying to put this thing together and I'm trying to pop one panel in and another panel comes out or undoes itself, it would drive me insane. And that mostly happens around the middle part of the body of the helicopter, where it kind of meets in the center section where the propeller blade is. That's the worst part. Clasping the legs back into their position, folding the head, and in fact, folding the cockpit back onto itself and forming it again. Once again, it's my favorite part. But that middle part, with all these fucking panels that are on the arm that are very, very loose, these panels right here, making sure that this is clasped in, making sure that the panels that form the feet are situated in to that top piece. It's a fucking nightmare, and quite frankly, almost ruined the experience of this figure. That I gotta be honest, I have to warn you, if you are just like me that needs absolute great detail in their transformations, and more importantly needs to be fun, again, you've been warned. You gotta pull those instructions out. Eventually I gave up. I had to look at the instructions, and even then the instructions are not even that well detailed. They're not really well told, so they're just mainly photos, and they're only shown from one angle. So the best course of action would be to go online, go on YouTube, look up other videos, and see how they transformed it, to see how you can get better results. Because transforming him from robot to vehicle, which I'm not gonna do here on camera because I know it's gonna be a nightmare. In fact, I was scared to do this review in the first place because I thought that was going to be the case, but I settled for doing the traditional alternate mode or vehicle mode or helicopter mode to robot mode. I was originally going to do the reverse. Start off with showing him in robot mode and then going into vehicle mode to prove a point. But I knew that I was going to lose my shit on camera. Most of you probably would have wanted to watch that anyway, but I knew that it was going to take forever to edit, and I just don't have the time or the energy to do that. So with that said, loving the way that Hasbro's taking this studio series with retconning a bunch of figures that they kind of fucked up, and Blackout is definitely an example of that, where he was upgrading the scaling department, at least for the most part, because again, I feel like as a leader, he could still be a little bigger, at least in robot mode. In vehicle mode, he's plenty big, but what's cool is that they were able to add some details, some little scalings, some little things here and there that really makes one of these figures really awesome to look at, especially up on the shelf, where it's like, yes, this could have been a masterpiece from Hasbro. But it's that transformation that not only is it a nightmare to transform from robot to helicopter, but even from helicopter to robot, like I demonstrated here in this review, it's not even that fun. It has fun parts, but then there's other parts that are just not fun, where I'm like, okay, panel goes here, panel goes there. Legs are starting to be weird. This back portion, all this flushing this in there, sometimes feels a little insecure. So transformation could have been much more fun, because quite honestly, the transformation of a transformer is often one of the reasons why I buy it. So to know that one of those facets of the figure kind of let me down, is a little bit of a bummer. But at least this figure makes up for it in its accurate detail and its scale and the way it was able to fix things from its past self right here. So I'm going to be giving Leader Class Blackout from the Studio Series line a low 8 out of 10. I know that sounds different than what you were probably expecting, and I gotta be honest, it would have crossed into 9 territory if the transformation was a little bit more clever and thought out, because I honestly feel like Hasbro was too busy trying to give us a really movie accurate and fixed version of Blackout that they didn't think it through how certain panels were supposed to go into a certain place, and that's what caused the transformation to just be a fucking pain in the ass, whether it be vehicle to helicopter or vice versa. So thank you guys so much for watching this very lengthy but rather in-depth review on Leader Class Blackout from Transformers, the Studio Series. Please let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of my review, and as well as the figure if you do own it. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you like and share this video to show your support, and of course subscribe for more reviews coming very, very soon. Of course, if you do subscribe, make sure to hit that bell notification so you know exactly when it goes up. I'll see you guys all on the next one. God, I'm tired. The Peter Parker that we know and love was still there. There was never a point where I hated him. I actually enjoyed watching him on screen. Multiple times, he actually did manage to make me laugh with a couple of the quips. Like I said, I felt like he was quipping a little too much, where his hit and miss ratio was a little higher than past Spider-Men that I have watched, both in live action and cartoon.
Ah! Nice move, Webhead. Now you know what a wrecking ball feels like. If I wanted to ride the Tilt-A-Whirl, I'd have gone to Coney Island.